alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a new guest to the podcast, DC Gomez. Welcome.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. Always great to talk to new people, and especially other authors, which most of my guests tend to be, but hey, whatever. So, DC, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and the sort of books you write.
I am a combination of author, podcaster like yourself, also a public speaker and a coach. So I do a little bit of everything. I'm the little kid that can't make up their mind. So I write in multiple genres. I do everything from urban fantasies to children's book and including devotional. So I'm the kid who one day is going to write some stuff about devils and the next day we're going to pray. So I do it all.
That's great. I mean, and if you're going to write about devils, you might want to pray. I mean, it might be time.
I think it's perfect combination because you can do it all in one day.
Yep. So I mostly write fiction, but I have been considering doing some nonfiction. I don't know. Do you dabble in any of that?
My devotionals are all nonfiction, so
of course.
a lot of it. I do a lot of it from my life, which is very, very personal and get very raw. So nonfiction, depending on what you're trying to do, I tend to kind of warn people is you're exposing a lot more yourself. While fantasies we have are security blankets, like I have talking cats as my security blankets. Nonfiction is you exposing to the world and giving them the best you have.
Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting take because I mean I definitely my background is in English literature, and so I wrote a bunch of essays that I didn't even really necessarily believe what I was writing. For school, because I knew the professors would some professors at least, many of them were very good, but there were a few in particular that I'm like, I better agree with their kind of take on the book or whatever that I was writing about, because otherwise I'm not going to get a solid grade, and so I could have my own version of what I would do. But I don't know, maybe that's intellectually dishonest, but I was just a student, so it didn't bother me that much.
That's writing fiction. You write fiction. So whether you're looking for an essay or not, you had a lot of practice from the beginning in writing essays. That's kind of what the fiction writer is about, is creating a very articulate point. You don't have to be committed your soul to it. You should write something that is intellectually sound and, challenging for the reader. So I think you've been writing fiction from the beginning. You're good.
Well, definitely. I mean, that goes without saying. And I did start writing fiction when I was very young, relatively young, I suppose. I mean, some people start when they're really young, like when they're kids. And I was a kid. I mean, I was like 13. But anyway. So, about your just general approach to fiction in particular, where do you start with a story? Do you start with the character or the setting? I mean, because, yeah. Don't let me lead that question too much.
Usually, I'm the one that gets an image in my head. I have a background. I went to school in film and television, so everything starts with images for me. So I usually would get a first scene, usually a first chapter, or something that catches my imagination. And then I just go with the whole what-if situation, and I let the story itself drive me and kind of go running down that path.
Oh, that's wonderful. So do you keep like an archive of things that inspire your visual imagination and that sort of thing?
I have sticky notes everywhere. So between Post-its and stickies, I should have like stocks in this company because they're all over my house. I have them in my walls. It is my bedroom is a combination of the eclectic artists and like pretty much soundboarding on it. So I have a whole side of a wall that just has all the notes of these ideas that I want to have in sticky pads. So people get very confused when they walk in. It's like, do you sleep or do you brainstorm? Like, don't judge. Don't be judging this.
I can do both.
Thank you. It's like, don't judge my bedroom.
Yeah. Oh, geez. But I think this is the best view. I mean, this is a non-video podcast, and that's the best view of the bedroom or any room that I have in my house that people need from me. Because, frankly, this place is a mess. And I'm not great at organizing things. But hey, it sounds okay. And that's all you really need to know if you're the listener here.
It is fun and exciting, and it fits my personality, which is interesting because the rest of the house is very minimalist. Like, I believe in very few things. Yet my room is full with all these little pieces and hodgepodge of things that just make me smile. So creativity comes very differently in that place.
Interesting. So yeah, so I mean, I do a lot of I always collected images and stuff online, you know. I mean, because I'd collect a lot of the fantasy art that I found and just, you know, save a file of it and so on. I've been doing that for years, for decades now, I guess. I did that basically when I started out because I started out kind of from the perspective of a kid who liked to play role-playing games and stuff like that, and I'd collect different kinds of, different, like, sci-fi art and stuff like that. Because also I was a kid growing up with the internet, which is a weird situation for anyone, though everyone does it nowadays, I guess.
It was new back in the day, remember that. Not
That's
many
true.
people got to play. Not many people honestly felt comfortable letting the kids on the internet. I remember my parents were very paranoid. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Nowadays, I'm pretty sure they would be terrified. I would be in a bubble if my parents were now raising me in this generation. There would be bubbles and security blankets all over the house.
And that might even be for the best. The internet's weird. Anyway, I mean, I just can't. But, I mean, what am I going to say? I do everything I do creatively online, so I can't really complain too much now, can I?
It's 50-50. Think about it that way. It's
Yeah.
50 good, 50 bad. And depending which side of your motivation fits you that day is the side that you're going to follow down that hole.
Definitely. But speaking of motivation, I suppose, what kind of drew you to writing fiction in particular? Yeah.
One of the stories I tell a lot of my listeners and a lot of my readers, which kind of goes, it starts kind of sad and depressing, but it gets better, I promise. It is, I graduated from NYU and then I joined the military. So as I've been doing math this week, it's been 21 years since I joined the Army. I joined 2001 and I was in basic training when 9/11 happened. So you can possibly imagine I went from joining the Army so I can learn about people and write these scripts about these people that I was going to meet and change my life. And it changed my life not the way I thought. My life transitioned very quickly. I had a great career in the military, but I got very focused in that whole corporate world. I got out of the military, worked for the federal government, and I had the life that everybody thinks. You know, you have the job, the house, everything. And I was miserable. This is the part that everybody goes, ouch. And it wasn't, I didn't like what I was doing. I was not following my purpose. I wasn't following my creativity. I wasn't enjoying that side of my world. So it was in July. I was sitting on my spiritual director's house and crying because I was miserable. And it came around to like, I want to write a book. You know, this is my bucket list. Why not? And she's like, write it. And I was like, who's going to read this? And we literally spent an hour, me having every excuse why I shouldn't do this, and her not listening. And because, she didn't care. She was not concerned about my plans. But I am an extremist. So it was all or nothing. So I had committed to doing this. And because I was in the military at the time, I thought, I'm just going to die. Don't ask me why. It was just those thoughts that come into your head. I'm going to die soon. So I wanted to have this book done for my parents. And just in case something happened, they would have this incredible book that I've written for them. Which, by the way, they still haven't read, so don't worry about it. That's kind of the world I live.
Aw.
It's kind of funny.
You said it got less sad. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. That's fine. I honestly be mortified if my parents read all my stuff.
Me too, trust me. So my mom actually is my best seller. Anybody that wants a book, she's like my book pimp. She will sell it to anybody. But at the same time, my parents are fluent in Spanish, so the English is something that takes them a little longer to read, whole manuscript. The one thing about it is I grew up in Salem, so I went from Dominican Republic to Salem. So fantasies should not be that hard for people to believe that I've been writing. So writing about witches and everything else, I grew up with it. That's kind of natural. But I found that love again. I found the passion. I found my inspiration that, as many people say, the most happiest you're ever going to find me is when I'm creating. And that's the bubble. It is that happy place. So writing has made everything around okay. And it has balanced the madness of my life.
Oh, that's wonderful. There you go. It did have an uptick at the end.
It does. We just got to get you there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's like a lot of stories, honestly. I mean, there's some stories that are just so relentlessly miserable, I basically can't handle them. I mean fiction, of course, here. I mean, your story wasn't nearly that dark as some of the stuff that I would just like, couldn't do this anymore, close that one. But then again, I'm sometimes surprised by the sort of stuff I can enjoy and no matter how nasty it is, and lately I've been getting to more like horror movies and watching some very dark TV as well, some very brutal animation in particular. Anyway, but that's not the point. I guess what I'm trying to say is, do your stories kind of, you talk about the joy and the security blankets, do you find there's ever odds? Because a lot of stories do focus on conflict. In fact, you might say most of them do. Is there ever an odd? Does that ever create conflict within you? You know, I mean, when you're trying. Yeah, go on.
One of the things that I realized, I see the world very dark comedy. So everything has a dark humor. Is the reason why the military to me was amazing, because I can give you stories that most people be terrified, but if you find the humor in it, it makes you go, okay, it was bad. I can laugh about it. Let's see what we can do. My stories have a lot of that. It's that element in between of finding, you can either cry or you can laugh about the world. You got to pick which one you're going to do. I'm going to find a way to find the humor. I'm going to find a way to bring these elements that are sometimes very dark. Like I deal a lot with death. So my books are based on the 4 horsemen. So it is, how do you make death not seem terrifying? Make her a woman. Make death be a companion. Make death be the person that's going to take care of your soul when you die, instead of somebody that rips you apart to kill you. So switch those elements. Give humor to the insanity of chasing zombies around Texarkana. And by the way, you can't kill the zombies. Like, what do we do? Knock them out and put them in the basement of a church so we can find a cure. And everybody's like, really? I was like, I thought it was really funny at the time. And people's like, okay. So when we switch the way we look at it, and I definitely realized recently my urban fantasy is almost like a cozy mystery, is going to have a happy ending. I can't just kill my people off and not give you that, oh my God, I destroy more vehicles than I do people, if it makes you feel better. So, and they all have names.
The cars and the boats and the planes just ruined
everything.
Yeah. Well, and imagine the helicopters might as well steer clear because they're already very vulnerable to crashes, as I understand it.
I have drones if it makes you feel better. My talking cat actually manipulates drones. Everybody's, how does he do it? I was like, I wasn't looking at the technicalities of a cat, controlling a drone. He just does. Nobody cared that he talked. They were more concerned how he used the drones. And I was like, oh, wow, guys, really? This
cats don't have human vocal cords either, so, they're equally far-fetched, yeah.
Nobody cared about that minor points. They were much more concerned that he had drones and he can use it to drop bombs. I was like, really? That's where we got you.
That sounds like fun.
It was awesome.
Though, frankly, a cat with a drone bomber is also terrifying. Those guys, the cats cats are scary. I mean, if they were like any cat big enough, if a cat was my size, well, it would be basically a tiger because I'm rather large. But whatever. Just imagine
any cat with powers. They would take over the world. Yeah. They're evil as it is. I have one. Trust me. I'm sure he's watching. But yeah, they're evil as it is. Be prepared. It's going to happen. They're going to control us all.
That's the actual end of humanity, or at least the end of human civilization, is when cats take over the world. Yes.
Cats and squirrels and probably pigeons. I'm terrified of. I was like, these things are going to take over.
Pigeons. One of these things is not like the other ones. Squirrels I can get behind, but pigeons? What's up with pigeons?
Have you seen pigeons in New York City?
No, I don't think I have. Okay. Oh, the Alfred Hitchcock movie?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Now I'm starting to see where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yep.
Ooh. Yeah.
They're like kamikaze pilots. They don't care. I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna die.
That's true. I mean, it's like or bats. Think about that. The bats just smashing through windows and stuff. Like and frankly, I mean, I don't know. It's just because the bats are a dark, a night animal that they're so much scarier than birds. But to me,
and because they fly like kamikaze, they don't care. I was like, you can fly in a straight line.
I was gonna say, and then again, an owl is probably the worst of both worlds.
Oh my God! And their heads spin around.
Yep.
Yeah.
They do that exorcist stuff.
I'm not going outside. Thanks, Tim. Now I'm terrified of the rest of the birds. That's just the pigeons.
Yeah, I mean, my oldest brother had an encounter with an owl when he was a kid, and we were camping, and then apparently he was terrified of this owl on his way to the bathroom at night, and he thought it chased him. It was pretty funny. It's a fun story to think back on, at least for me, because I wasn't the one getting chased by an owl.
I was wondering how he feels about it because he's.
Oh, he doesn't. He doesn't. He's not. I don't think he. Well, it's a good. Let's just speak quietly. I don't think he needs to know that I told this story of his. Anyway,
I won't say it. Shh. And listeners, don't share it either.
yeah, nobody
Top secret.
nobody share it. Don't worry, he's not like in the public eye or anything, and nobody's gonna find out. I didn't tell you which of my older brothers it was. No, did I? I don't remember.
No, don't say it.
No,
We're
no,
gonna
no.
leave it at
Then I have 3 of them, so it's fine.
that. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, one of these Catholic families where just constantly get tons of kids. Okay, so anyway,
I'm Catholic, so I understand completely.
yes. So as far as I guess, actually, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, does you did mention your devotionals and stuff? Do you have a particular set of rules that you use related to maybe your religious practice, maybe anything else when you're writing a book, or is it just what happens, but you want to put in the story goes in the story, that kind of thing?
For my urban fantasy, I pull from many mythologies and religions. So you're going to see a lot of the Catholics, innuendos and dogmas and things that don't make any sense, like purgatory. Like for every Catholic listening, I know you're all going to be like, can't believe you said that. Truly think about what purgatory is. Nobody can define it. It's like a giant waiting area of what we're not sure, but we're paying for something, but you're just waiting.
It's heaven's parking lot.
It is. Or, the line at the bouncer for the club, whatever
Yeah.
I want to call it. You're just there. So I take a lot of liberties with that. And a lot of people have said it's not what I believed in. And then I have to remind them it is urban fantasy, not a document in religion. So please do not get offended and have some fun with it and let your imagination go loose. Because I do tend to pull from mythologies. I do Egyptian. We do a little bit of Catholicism. We do a little bit of Southern Baptist. Anything that makes sense for the story, I tend to play with it. Because at the end of the day, my goal is to get you to forget your problems for a minute. I want you to enjoy yourself. I want you to escape. I want you not to feel trapped in this environment. So my books do have social commentaries throughout. But for the most part, you're going to have a fun journey. If you want to find it, you can. If not, it's going to be a fun journey of action, adventure, madness, and everything in between.
Ah, yes. We like everything in between, don't we? No,
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of range there.
Absolutely.
And, this is my silliness coming out. But anyway, no, that's a great answer. And I think, I guess I'm kind of fascinated with some of these older, I don't know about older, but there's a lot of authors out there who, because they see the world in a particular way, their books reflect that very heavily, right? So they're not playing around with mythology so much as they think the world is a particular way, and they're just writing a book that it's almost like nonfiction in that way. I mean, and when I think about it, yeah, go on.
I agree. It's a different way of seeing the world, and it makes it very restrictive because it is your beliefs, it is your facts, and you're just interpreting them into whatever situation you want to convince in, which is beautiful, but it's also very restrictive. And one of the things that happens is when you're creating a world that way, anytime somebody takes offense of it or takes a shot, it hits you hard. Like, let's be honest. Like with me, like if you don't believe in the talking cat, I'm sure I'm not going to die. Or someone else a talking cat. Come on now, guys.
Come on.
It would be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Cats would probably say unkind things to me. And I just have to point out that they're approximately as lazy as me and probably, approximately have the same amount of body fat. Anyway, depending on the size of cat, I guess. But anyway, I guess I was thinking specifically like Tolkien. I mean, especially because I haven't actually watched the new show, but I mean, it's out in the news. I mean, everyone's talking about it. That Rings of Power, I believe, is the name of the show. But anyway, but I was thinking about that because, but that always takes me back to like the Tolkien Professor podcast and that sort of stuff, and how it seemed to me from those episodes, from the great Tolkien Professor podcast. I'm not sure if it's still going, but there's a lot of good lectures on there, and in that, it made it clear that it's like, well, he saw the world as like, okay, he either saw these fairy stories was real, or he was just very dedicated to following this genre that he was kind of creating. And I think there's something really interesting about it either way. It's just a different thing, right?
It's an amazing process, and it's almost like actors who become method actors, who get so immersed in their world that they become the characters. To me, that's always kind of amazing and terrifying at the same time, because when do you go too far? Like, what characters that actually trigger something in your brain that you become this? I'm like, oh, that's more than my mind can recreate. I don't mind immersing myself. I don't know if I want to become that person per se.
Yeah, I had the hardest time coming up with characters that felt like people when I was starting out as an author. And I feel like I kind of have it now because my characters, although I don't really understand it, you know, I mean, I'm like, okay, so the characters are going to be there and they're going to make sense because I can do that now. But the process by which I discover them is kind of mysterious still. Yeah.
How do you do it?
Well, that's my point. I don't really know how. I mean, because it used to be like, well, I'm autistic. I hate that I always bring that up, but I don't really hate it that much because obviously I bring it up anyway. So I'm autistic. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when I was a teenager, or when I was like 12 maybe, and I was shortly before I started writing. And when I started, but I had a really hard time getting to know anybody. Basically, I'm also a twin. I have a twin brother. So, I had one really good friend who was basically very similar to me growing up. Because we were twins, identical twins. And no, it's great. I highly recommend the twin experience to anyone who can have it. I know that's not really an option people get, but if you ever are being reincarnated, I don't know, see if you can sign up for that one. It's a good list to be on.
Make a request.
Yeah, exactly. So, I do think that kind of worked to make make it harder for me to understand characters that weren't like me for a long time. But when I learned about it, when I started, I just did I practiced a bunch. I've written like 30 books now, and I think about book 15, I started getting it. So it took a long time, and then I was able to go back and make some of the other ones make more sense. But what I mean, but that's just the process, right? But I just learned to get to know people faster, I think. I learned to be more observant of people, and then I could observe these people I'd made up. Because I feel like they're already there a lot of the time, because I already do have an image, an idea of what they're going to be like, at least for the main characters. And it feels very concrete very quickly. I don't know. How do you come up with characters?
It's almost a little similar. I have, probably because of filmmaking and television and just creating scripts, it's a little bit more natural and organic. It's like watching people, like you said. But one of the assignments we had in school was going out there to watch people and writing what they did and writing their dialogue. So I spent a lot of time analyzing, subconsciously following what they do. So my characters, I don't do character development like many people do. Like a lot of people have pages and pages. I wish I was that person. So you meet the characters with me at the same time. And I usually say we're going on a date. Like I date my characters. Like I will watch whatever that conversation is and just kind of let them flow through the pages. So I'm literally typing scenes in my head, what I think these people will be doing in those situations that I put them.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I think one of the characters because I don't make a lot of character notes either, but one of the characters I found the most enduring that I was able to write the longest, I actually started out by writing the scene that doesn't appear in the main book that she's in. And I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, I think that really helped because I wrote this chapter. There's like many. It's not even a short story, really. It's just a series of. It's just one little scene that doesn't really go anywhere. And then, but it told me so much about this character, and that's actually that book's actually I managed to get that book out eventually. It was one of the first ones where I feel like I got a good female protagonist who actually felt like a person. That's Ya Jane from Origin of Storms. Jeez, I can't remember the name of my own book. But so that one's a big sci-fi, but it's also my longest book. And I was able to write it for a whole year, and I have ADHD. I get distracted very easily. And so that book's huge, and it's long, and it's all one point of view, and so maybe that's one of the reasons I got to know her so well, because I was just writing her point of view for 180,000 words in a row. You know.
That usually would do it. That would definitely get you in somebody's head, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. And I mean, I've related to other people, but it's funny that for like, it was like 6 months after that, whenever I would go to type a scene, I would start with the character's name on a lot of sentences, and I would always just type her name. I'd start with a Y, and I'm like, oh no, we're not writing about her right now. Took a while to adjust.
I can see that.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm interested though. Do you have any? Do you have series? Do you write in like long form like that, or are they more episodic when you tell stories of the same characters?
They're more series oriented. So my
Okay.
main one, Guest Intern and the Intern Diaries, that one has 5 novels and 3 novellas. And then that universe spanned out to be the Reapers universe. So what I ended up doing was placing all my urban fantasy within the same universe. It was getting very complicated to keep all my fantasy series in different uniforms, and then trying to remember the rules of the universe and trying to remember what the magic rules was. So while I decided, let's put them all on the same planet, all connected to each other, and the talking cat Constantine is my glue to everything. So I can always relate them all and connect them, and I have cameos all over the place. And they talk about people from the different books. So if you pick up any of the books, you will eventually know somebody in some other place, and kind of going around the world that way.
Nice. I've not done a big universe like that yet. I think the closest I've gotten to it so far is my Demon Hunter setting. The name of the maybe that book needs the series needs a different title, because it gets there's a lot more to it than demon hunting, but it is a high fantasy, and that's the other reason I feel like maybe that's the wrong title for it. But that's much more of an urban fantasy sounding title to me now that I think about it. But hey, whatever.
It works.
Yeah, it's still fine. I'm just musing because I'm running out of steam. No, but actually, speaking of steam, this show is actually about out of it. But DC Gomez, thank you so much for being on.
Tim, it's been a pleasure. I had so much fun chatting with you.
Well, it's great. It was great to meet you. So, where can people find your books? And yeah, if you've got your podcast, anything else you want to pimp out there?
The fastest way to get a hold of anything is to check out my website, which is dcgomez-author.com. There is a link to my podcast in there, all of my socials, as well as the book, so anybody can find me. They can even send me an email from there if they wanted to chat. So absolutely.
Well, great. Thank you so much. That was great. And as for this podcast, you can find us at mentalcellarpublications.com or timneederwriter.com. And timneederwriter.com/books has all my books. You can find them there. Or you can just go straight to Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and yeah, you can get them all wherever find books, or find print-on-demand books are printed, or find ebook. And the ebooks are currently exclusive with Amazon. So let me be clear there. But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks once again, DC Gomez. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Tim.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. Stay safe out there, and I will talk to you again next week, hopefully with a better night's sleep behind me. All right. Bye-bye.
That tears it.